One of the biggest issues was Gather was based on proof of work. People don't know they're using Web3. Whereas if you have a niche audience from the States or Western Europe about technology or fintech, example, they're paying very high rates. So, since I started trying to solve this problem, it's been 6 years.
Sure.
And I've tried everything you could imagine.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Hash It Out by Foundership. This is Bimlesh Gundurao and I'm the co-founder at Foundership. We are a global Web3 accelerator VC that looks at early stage startups from across the world who are building out fantastic Web3 solutions to solve the next generation of problems and empowering every user to take control of not only their financials, but also their data and monetize their data and have control over truly what belongs to them and monetize that in a process of how enterprises make them work. So with this, I'm super excited to have Raghav, alias Reggie, onto this show today. And he's a founder of Hydro. Welcome, Raghav.
Thank you, Bimlesh. Thanks for having me. Absolute pleasure.
Absolutely fantastic. So, as a global accelerator, we have seen a lot of projects come our way. Over the year, we have received over 700 applications. We have built a portfolio of 40 portfolio companies now. But what struck out to me very interesting when I looked at Hydro was the very unique angle in which you have taken a bet on solving this problem. So before we go there, deeper, why don't you talk a little bit about yourself, your background, what got you inspired into crypto, blockchain, and we'll go on from there.
Sure. Before I was in crypto, I used to work corporate. Part of my corporate stints were working in advertising, actually. And in advertising, I was working with a company called Publicis Group. It's a fairly large marketing company, right? I learned about crypto over there, to be fair. Not crypto, sorry. I learned about advertising, copywriting, and design over there. It was quite interesting. But I didn't stay in corporate too long. I left that. I founded my first startup, which was completely Web 2. It was something like a personal concierge that pivoted into a delivery platform, right? So think of Deliveroo or Uber Eats or something similar platforms, right? It was the same kind of platform on the back end. So the riders, the delivery tech, all of that. Post that, what I worked on was I was hired as a consultant for a website, right? And he's like, hey, can you help me monetize my content without showing ads? I'm like, interesting one. So I put my head together, tried to come up with a solution. I heard of something called CoinHive. Now, CoinHive was essentially one of the first movers in the specific solution. What they did was they provided a script you'd put on the back end of your website, and anytime a visitor would hit your website, their CPU would be used to mine Monero, right? Without you ever knowing. And it became famous because it was being used by Pirate Bay, right? Pirate Bay, like they were using it and people noticed when they were going there that their CPU was going up, their temperatures were going up, their fans were spinning. And that's, how it blew up. That idea itself of trading processing power for revenue, I was like, that's genius. But the way they executed it was horrible. And that's partly from my experience in working in advertising, right? Yeah. So that's when I founded the first version of Hydro, essentially, which was Gather back in 2018. With all the bells and whistles a publisher would want, etc., with the consent, okay, hey, your CPU will be used to mine cryptocurrency, etc., but without any, at that point, any UX issues. So on 2018, was working on it for the next 4 years, various different ways of trying to solve the problem. One of the biggest issues was Gather was based on proof of work, right? Hydro is based on proof of stake. What we saw, no matter what we did with the proof of work based model, the stigma attached with cryptocurrency based mining was so high and created such a high barrier to entry. We're like, this isn't going to work long term because any large publisher or website you talk to immediately thinks that their end users, PCs and everything slow down. And, to our credit, we had actually developed a custom hashing algorithm, which was not memory hard. So it was like it was very simple or very low usage on CPUs or memory. People barely even noticed it, to be fair. But just a stigma of proof of work was not great, right? What it was doing essentially back then was people's end users' PCs, mobile phones, tablets, etc., was being used to secure the Gather blockchain, which was an L1, right, at the time. But again, that stigma was too heavy. And then in August, we pivoted to Hydro. Partly the name Hydro is because we're built on SUI, so we're no longer on old L1, and we've moved from proof of work to proof of stake, right? Going after the same problem, but just how we solve it is different this time.
Oh, okay. So I think with your background of advertising and trying to monetize and not relying on ads is essentially what you're trying to solve with with Hydro, right? And give us a perspective on how do publishers leverage the solution what you have built, and how does that actually work?
Sure. It's actually fairly simple. Like if you want to sign up, you're a publisher or an app. Well, we don't have this SDK out yet, but if you're an app owner, etc., right? What's going to end up happening is that you're just going to come to our site, hydro.online. You're going to sign up, right? And it takes about, I think, 45 seconds or somewhere around a minute to integrate the code into your backend. It's a simple script. You put in mywebsite.com, generates the script. You put the script between the header and body tag of your website.
Sure.
And then it verifies the script is there, and then you're monetizing from there, right? It's really, really simple. So yeah, that's honestly how it works. We have 3 tiers. So we have freemium, that's what users will sign up for. We have the plus program, and we have the pro program, right? Freemium currently is uncapped. It's more of a user acquisition strategy right now. But it will be capped in terms of earnings. And then we push people to the plus program. The plus program is currently $500, but it's not a payment. The $500 is used to buy, half of it is used to buy and stake SUI, half of it is used to buy and stake Hydro, right? It takes these tokens out of circulating supply. The SUI APY is then paid back to the publishers. The Hydro APY is then paid back to the publishers. And then there's a whole range of features that actually are made available to Plus users. As an example, right? We have, something we're building is content insight and recommendation. So a recommendation will come out like saying, hey, because you had too many paragraphs, or your paragraphs were too long, or your font was in this format, etc., you had a higher bounce rate and a higher churn rate, right? Which could be very useful for publishers. And we have other features like this that are coming out, which are only available to Plus users. Down the line, and this is where I'll talk about Pro, so we have these Web2 users essentially coming and using Hydro, right? We're currently on the front end, it's nice Web3 product that's essentially wrapped for Web2. The whole experience is made in a way that people don't know they're using Web3, even when they sign up, which is the main way we've kind of designed this whole thing. The value is created from the APYs generated from these layer ones we're fractalizing at the back end, which currently is SUI, right? Next, down the line, we want to do Near, we want to do AVAX, we want to do Solana. So all that APY is then taken and then paid back to the ecosystem. But once we are fractionalizing these validators on these multiple L1s, it creates a very nice interoperability layer. So all these Web2 users and their subsequent website users, because we have features available to them as well, which I'll just talk about, once they come into the ecosystem and they see in their wallet, oh, you earned so much, you can withdraw it to your bank account or etc., whatever it may be, or you can take it to another ecosystem. You could take it to Near, you could take it to AVAX, you could take it to Solana, all of it, right? So it's bringing these Web2 users and exposing them to crypto in a very seamless manner that removes all the jargon and the horrible user experience that exists in crypto right now. So some of the features we have towards the end users, as an example, is a loyalty program. So one of them is that if you as a website owner, right, enable loyalty, you can share a certain amount of your revenue with them, however you match, how much you want. And then we'll also match that, right? So say you want to share 10%, we'll match that. It goes to these end users at the end of the day. And it's a form of retention and stickiness. If they have 2 sites with the same amount of content or similar content, they're going to go to the site that's giving them something back. On top of that, any other site they visit that has loyalty enabled, they're earning boosted rewards as well.
So talk to me from a mechanics point of view that, I run a website where I integrate and I'm in one of these plans. Let's take the pro plan, like you said. I pay $500. Half of it goes to staking on SUI, half of it goes on staking on Hydro. Now, what happens on the interaction between the user, the publisher, and the Hydro? How does that economics work out there?
Okay, so let's talk about the interaction, and let's talk about the economics, right? The interaction is fairly simple, right? From a user experience perspective. Hydro at the back end, we're not a platform. You don't have to host your content on our website or anything simple. It's basically code you're putting on the back end of whatever you've built and created, right? It's fairly simple. For an end user of a website, if you want to take part in those rewards or get access to certain features, like another feature for when you enable a loyalty program is that if you go to a website, and this is with the loyalty program enabled, you'll get a little pop-up and notification telling you that, hey, the content you're reading on this website is AI generated, right? So, some nice bells and whistles we added. That's on the end user perspective. For a publisher perspective, it's just about the dashboard. Like they come integrate, they're able to see their rewards. Once they KYC and KYB, they can just move it to their bank account without any problems. Very, very straightforward process. When the unit economic, we look at unit economics, right? It works like this very simply. So we have the freemium program, right? Which is capped up to a certain extent. And then we have the plus program and the program. So the plus program, which is currently $500, half used to buy and stake SUI, buy and stake Hydro, right? And then later down the line, other layer ones. All this collateral that's essentially collected, right? Gone and used to fractionalize multiple validators on multiple different networks. And then on the pro program, what it works there is that because we're fractionalizing validators, right? Someone actually has to still physically run the validators, be it on cloud or be it on bare metal machines as well. What happens is all the publishers that are in the Plus program are going to come together. They're going to vote, hey, I'm going to choose you to run the specific validator and represent the cohort of a certain amount of publishers, right? In return, that pro user is going to say, I'm charging 10% of your net earnings to promise 98, 99% uptime, right? Now, the whole token economics is actually very straightforward. So in the very beginning, right now we're paying out in USDT flat. Once we switch over post TG, it's going to be in Hydro tokens, and then all the APY generated from such as SUI, NEAR, et cetera, et cetera. That's what happens. For a publisher's perspective, what they're just going to see is USDT in their wallet or US dollars or whatever the currency they're in, right? And on the back end, it's actually tokens, and then it's getting converted, right? Because Web2 users, you don't really want to give them if they're not exposed to cryptocurrency, don't know how it works, they might get a little frightened, and the whole process of swapping and selling and all that stuff isn't great. So it's just there, it's available to them in that format, right? Because Hydro is a fixed currency at the end, it is a fixed amount of supply. The more tokens that are essentially locked up in mass nodes, in fractional collateralization as well, it just means there's a certain price stability that happens, and that's essentially how the whole economics work. It's that the more tokens or more Plus users we're able to create, the more users that are able to use our interoperability layer, the more tokens that get locked up in our master nodes. Because to run these validators, right, you need to have a master node, which requires a certain amount of collateral as well. And it's just using those economics as we go up. Other things like down the line is once we have swaps enabled and other features within the our wallet, right, between all these layers, a portion of those fees will go back to Plus users as well. And then we take our cut. But yeah.
Got it. So from an end user point of view, there's more either an engage to earn or a read to earn, model point of view. Is there somewhere down the line that you're also looking at user generated content that can get published on the website, and then the user gets to monetize through your integration of distribution with several websites?
It's very interesting that you mentioned that, because our core, like even from Gather, we've never actually gone and created a format where you come and upload content to us and we distribute. We've always gone down the route about we're just a technology provider and you integrate it into your existing websites and applications. And I think a big part of the reason is that we feel from a customer acquisition perspective, it's very different, right? Essentially, we're almost B2B here, whereas when you're going to B2C, it's two very, very different things. Maybe in the future, we did look at having maybe a browser extension at one point, but we've dropped those plans as of now.
Got it. Right. Now, why did you choose SUI? Well, what was your consideration to pick up SUI?
It was a directional bet. So in August of last year, or July, I think, I'm associated with GAF. I'm one of the founding partners of GAF Capital. So, very close with the SUI team, and the level of support we were seeing with the SUI team was fantastic. right?
Okay.
And Sui as a new layer one, they had not had their market movements yet. So it was taking a directional bet that we could be the first blue chip on Sui. And second, just the support levels you're getting from the top down compared to other layer ones was much better. And then obviously the tech stack. Any new technology or new language such as Move is going to have certain amount of teething problems, but they're resolved fairly fast. And it's just about an RR, like okay, the headaches we face or the inconveniences we face, is it worth potentially being the first blue chip and et cetera, et cetera. And we weighed the cost, and so far it's been paying out very well. That being one of the first movers on Sui, I would say.
Fantastic. Now, how close are you to? Is your token already launched?
The token is not launched. The product is live.
Product is live. And what are your plans on launching a token? Do you see a strong? One is because you are already going to be having that functionality of staking Hydro tokens as well. It will make a lot of sense to have your tokens being actually launched. So what are your plans in launching your token, and how are you planning to go about it?
Next 60 days or so is what we're looking at to launch the token specifically. Yeah, that's about it. We're acquiring users currently at about 80 users a day, which is pretty good. I mean, we only started acquiring under Hydro 4 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. We started at 10, 15, 20, and then we were currently at 80. We're at the current growth rate, we're looking at 250 within maybe 2 to 3 weeks per day, which is a fantastic number. All Web2 users. Like we actually had a call with a power user the other day. He said not to state his website, but he has 10K daily active users, right? It's a kind of a study group kind of website he has. And we were talking to him, and we haven't spoken to many power users in the beginning. He was the actual first one, and we're talking to all our power users now. And he's like, "Oh my God, the Plus program sounds amazing. The loyalty program sounds amazing. Sign up right now. Sign up right now." And that made us very excited because from Gather, we had primary data knowing that, okay, for us acquiring publishers is going to be very easy, right?
Okay.
The crux in our whole business model was the conversion rate from freemium to Plus, the paid version, essentially, right? The more paid versions we have, or the higher conversion rates we have, that means the more success we're going to. And then that was it. And every power user we've spoken to so far, albeit it's not that many, I think about 15, but they have very large traction. They all love it. They all said, "Sign me up immediately." So it's a good first indication of what our thesis was.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the early indicators of product market fit also, right? To say that one is from a conversion metric, second is your retention metric, and third is your a combination of what happens when you stop your service. How desperate are the users to continue to keep using your product? And because you're offering a unique value proposition of enabling them to monetize content without ads, so they are no longer dependent on a third party to drive revenue for them, but they can focus on their core business of attracting users to come to their site. The more users spend time on the site, that's how they generate their revenue.
Exactly. So it's an interesting point about the positioning of not having to use ads. That's what we used in Gather. We've avoided that this time. And for the pure fact is that if we go look at, I'm talking versus ad, the traditional ad networks, right? If we look at, so advertising is location discriminate. It discriminates against your location, right? So they're going to pay out less if your users are from East Asia, South Asia, etc., Africa, right? Whereas if you have a niche audience from the States or Western Europe about technology or fintech, they're paying very high rates. So in those cases, at the current state we're at, we can't compete with that. Like we can't pay as much. But if we look at, like, again, South Asia, East Asia, Africa, etc., like that, we'll pay more. But what becomes very interesting is that the users in those areas, right, in let's say US, Canada, North America, blah, 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 we come and say, hey, you don't have to disable ads. You can run this along your existing monetization strategy. So we're not blocking those users out, right? And we're still able to onboard them. It's up to the website or publisher, like, oh, okay, hey, I'm earning enough. I want to increase the user experience. I'm going to disable ads. So I'm like, oh, I don't care about my users. My site is sticky enough. I'm going to run everything under the sun.
Right. Interesting. Yeah, that was actually my next follow-up question, to say that, hey, in your model, are you going to coexist with the with the existing systems in the market, or you're going to restrict the publisher to say that, do not run ads. I think, yeah, exactly. So the moment we get into restrictions, we are now trying to make the user or the decision maker to change the way they're used to, right? And that also creates barrier in the sales process and just usage, and it just becomes more troublesome for for a decision maker to get convinced to use and try not only a new technology but also a new way of doing business.
Yes, 100%, right? Don't restrict. They're going to use it if they want to. If they don't, they won't. Very simple. And in this case, because we're not restricting, especially like, let's call them high ticket users, especially because of the currency power, they're going to run it alongside, right? We're not bombarding ads in anyone's faces or anything like that. So yeah, it's fairly clean.
Fantastic. Talk to us a little bit about your team. How big is your team? Who else is there with you in your core founding team?
Sure. Interesting question. So I'll talk about now and what we used to have in Gather, right?
Sure.
So, my first startup, I was a first-time founder, right? Like, I did not know the value of a co-founder or a CTO or like a proper CTO or anything like that, right? It was very happenstance where I'm like, this is a problem and I need to solve it. And it just happened, right? Coming in together, we had a very large team, right? The original founding team is myself. We have Ayan, our Chief Product Officer, Ashish, our CTO, Gabe, our CMO, and a few others here and there. You had startups, some people leave, some people join, etc., etc. But what I think our biggest issue was the bloat. We had the technical bloat. We had a very, very large team at one point. We were closing in on 50 people because we were developing so many products and services that were it was all designed to enhance the layer one, right? Building a layer one on its own is a huge undertaking. It's one thing to build it, and the second thing to attract users, which is actually the more expensive thing, is attracting all these users because of competition that exists in the space. So this time around, what I've done is, instead of keeping a large on-roll staff, I've used mainly vendors for everything. And vendors I trust and I've worked with in the past. And I have a very small core team. So there's about 10 of us in total, including the founding team. And the rest are all vendors. So from a marketing perspective, design and graphics or copy, it's actually one team that does all our designs, graphics, and communication strategy. And why I've done that specifically is that what I've seen previously, you might have brand guidelines, you have communication guidelines, all this lovely stuff. But when you start using multiple designers or multiple agencies or multiple people even to work and follow those, there's always some misalignment that will happen. And over the long term, it starts to really show. So this time we have one team doing it all. So the brand stays on point, very seamless. The tonality, the communication is all, as it should be. And it's not changing over multiple iterations or over time. Yep. So that's one thing we've done on the marketing side. On the technology side, we're using a vendor, and specifically I'm using these vendors because I put in one is technical debt. We don't really have technical debt because it's almost starting from scratch because we're working on Move. Obviously, some parts come over from Gather, which does aid the go-to-market timing. But with on-roll staff, I can't put fines. I cannot put penalty clauses, right? I cannot fire them like this. I have to pay a gratuity and all this stuff, right? Whereas with a vendor, I'm like, hey, if you don't meet this deadline by this date, it's a 10% per day, right? Yeah. It's saving my cost and investors' money. Simple. So that's the way we're approaching it. And so far, it's almost going to be a year since we've been running it like this, and our deadlines are pretty good. We've not been missing deadlines. Costs are under control. So I think this is a winning strategy for the long term. Because after a certain amount of time, once the initial product is developed, sure, you're going to have maintenance and product lifecycle and all that stuff. We don't need a 30-person team or a 20-person team anymore, right? And then offboarding, if they were on rolls, will be expensive because you have to pay severance and all that.
Absolutely. Talk to us a little bit about your fundraising journey. Have you raised money on this particular venture? How did that go? Who are some of your key investors?
Sure.
Talk to us about your fundraising journey, which will be useful for many of the early stage founders who are listening in as well.
My position is a little different, I would say, from that perspective. So we started fundraising, I think, we did our seed round and like FNF round back in August, like the tail end of the bear market. So it's not as easy. People always want lowest valuations and all that stuff. But we closed that, and then going into December, January, like we closed most of our rounds. I think in a month or 2 months, to be very honest. It was frantically quick. Some of our investors, so GAF is one of the leads, Faculty Group, Rarestone Capital. I have a list somewhere actually. Hold on.
Sure.
3 commas. Who else? Tensor Capital, Andromeda Capital, LBT Capital. We have a very, very large list of investors
So you
already.
you did a combination of both equity and token, or you primarily
No.
raised through token?
Tokens.
Token raise. Okay.
Token raise, yeah, mainly token raise. We have some good angels as well. A lot of KOLs in the round as well. So some Web2 angels and Web2 investors. So there's one called ELA Capital based out of Canada. We have Redbeard Ventures. Yeah, one of our angels is Narendra Morkumbi based out of India. He's a former director of ICICI Bank.
Sure.
Quite a few people. Yeah.
Fantastic.
And we have about, I think, in our total round left, we may have like maybe 300K or something odd like that. Very, very small amount, and not counting the public sale because you can't, to be fair. But yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving gears, right? So you have had a fair idea of the problem that you're trying to solve, and whom are you going to target from the entire publishing space. Now, talk to us a little bit about what were some of your ways in which you segmented your target market. How did you approach them? What was your experience in taking some feedback and then trying to see if target segment A did not work, then what did you do to go to another segment and acquire your
Sure.
customers?
Honestly, trial and error is the way we did it, right? From our gather days. We basically segmented them into two types: your SMEs and your marquee clients, right?
Okay.
What I saw with
were there any demographic parameters that you used to qualify an SME?
Yes. So generally speaking, well, over time, yeah. Initially, we're like SMEs, anyone under, I think, what was it, less than 5 million, a few million sessions per month, right?
Okay.
Over time, then we segmented by location, because it was very different dealing with SMEs in North America versus this part of the world, right? I'm even counting Europe at this point. And what we saw was that SMEs, especially this part of the world, were very, very easy to target. It was automated at that point, right? But when dealing with SMEs from the US, right, it was different. This was still 2021, 2020, that type, and there's still things about the SEC. Proof of work was always a huge issue to deal with. People always had this hesitation, oh my God, proof of work, and it's going to blow up my computer, and this. So we had to get past that barrier alone. Always a huge problem with SMEs. Now this is where the problem. That was one of our biggest barriers coming to marquee clients. So we were talking to one of the US's and probably the world's largest sports magazines. Right, everyone knows who this guy is on Twitter as well. We went through multiple rounds of conversations. I think almost 6 or 7, all the way to the top. They liked the idea. Obviously, the hesitation of proof of work was huge, like absolutely massive. Apart from it also being crypto, right? From a branding perspective, we didn't hide that we were a crypto or blockchain company like we have right now. If you go to hydro.online, it's very we put it very deep down that okay, this is a blockchain company and everything. It's a SaaS solution, right? Don't confuse the audience. Don't make them go, oh my God, cryptocurrency and this. No, there's a SaaS solution at the back end. The technology uses blockchain, right? That's it. It's a technology that's serving a purpose. In Gather, it wasn't like that. We kept the crypto part up front, which also caused issues. So coming back, we saw that marquee clients were always an issue, no matter where the demographics were. SMEs, the easiest was always this side of the world. This time around, it seems to be very different, at least with the SMEs. Western SMEs, because the power user I mentioned, he's actually based in New York, which was very, very interesting to us. Yeah, we had no idea. That was not part of our thesis that Western SMEs would be interested at this point in time. So that kind of threw a wrench in the whole thing, because we're like, okay, our branding or our communication strategy is working really well at this point, where people aren't hesitant.
Fantastic. Any key insights or lessons you want to share on how you crafted your value proposition based on the constant iterative learnings and feedback that you're receiving from your customers?
So since I started trying to solve this problem, it's been 6 years.
Sure.
And I've tried everything you could imagine. I think your customer, especially because we work in crypto, right? It is one thing that technology changes so often, because if you look back in 2018, proof of stake was not exactly around at that time either, right? It was still proof of
Right.
work. So this solution couldn't exist back then either. So it's one is being agile with the times, taking feedback seriously, very seriously, qualifying the feedback more importantly as well, right? It's coming from the
Yeah.
type of
Yeah.
user you want in the long term, and have defined metrics of what you think failure and success is in terms of when you pivot or iterate, right? And iterate, fail, or move fast as you can. Sure, it might take you freaking 5, 6 pivots, 7 pivots till you hit the point, but there's that famous story of Airbnb, right?
Yeah.
Same thing. And I think we've hit the nail on the head this time.
Fantastic. Now, switching gears, talk to us a little bit about, what are you doing with GAF Capital? What
Sure.
are their primary focus on? Is that your prop fund? Is that you got a bunch of LPs on it? What's the generic? I wouldn't say generic. What's the core thesis behind your investment criteria that you look at?
Sure. GAF Capital started in 2020 or 2021. It's a very funny story. So me and the guys actually, we went to high school together here,
Okay.
right? It's prop. It's all our own money. We're led by His Highness Sheikh Moala and a bunch of other guys. All, basically like long-term living in Dubai. Our thesis, everyone has their own flavor that they like specifically, right? I think this in this cycle, we will not really touch long vesting. This, also my experience in GAF and investing, I think we've touched over 150 companies now invested, right? Designing our tokenomics and those things that the whole part for investors, it really helped me, right? I know what an investor is going to like, an investor is not going to like, and then obviously designing our whole package in that manner to make it attractive, right? So one of the things that we saw in the last cycle, generally things with extremely long cliffs and long vests, they never made us money, right? We usually lost money on that, or best case break even. So
Okay.
it's very rare we'll do that. And if we will, it's usually just from an investment, from a branding perspective, right? We like low valuations. Personally, I love infrastructure. I'm an infrastructure guy. It still needs to improve. Anything increases user experience as well. Yeah, I would say infra and low to mid caps is where we like our valuations.
And what's your typical ticket size that you invest?
Minimum of 50,000 all the way up to about a 1.5 million.
Great. And do you do only token projects? Do you do both equity and token?
We do equity, but again, very, very rare. If it's in the format like it's a token warrant, that's fine, right? But if it's just a pure play equity play, that's maybe 1% of all of our investments.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, there are not many crypto investors who are very enthusiastic about just pure play equity. It has to be equity with token warrant. Yeah.
Yeah, the liquidity cycle is just too long compared to tokens,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah, great. And what stage do you guys typically like to come in?
Everyone loves early. Everyone loves early.
At early, but do you have a preference that the project, like in your case, right? You are yet to token launch now, but at the same time, you had a product. And I'm sure when you started fundraising, you also had some early customers to go after to showcase that, hey, I do have some customers who are kind of using my product, or this is a feedback that I've got the product, and hence creating a certain higher sense of trust for the investors to come behind you, leaving aside that you're also part of GAF Capital. But if you had to leave GAF Capital aside to augment your credibility and the trust factor, would you come in at that stage, or would you even take in a more riskier bet with founders who have not yet built out their MVP, or have not yet figured out their customer segments or their community segments?
It's an interesting question. So what really helped my credibility and the team's credibility is that with Gather, we did go to reach a $500 million market cap, right?
Okay.
And we reached 500 million, and that was with a raise of, I think, $800,000. So not a lot of money, and that was peak bear market raise as well. So that really helped. That oh, this founder has, has proven success, essentially, at least from an investor perspective. So that really helps with credibility. But leaving apart, let's say I'm a partner at GAF. I'm also a co-founder of something called Crypto Fight Night. Leaving those social proofs, it would be harder because the networks wouldn't be as accessible. Because I've been, Dubai is the hub of crypto right now,
Right.
and that makes being able to go face to face, meet people, makes it a lot easier. It's one thing to do virtual, but this time around in this cycle, it's face to faces matter. 100% face to face matters for everything you need.
Exactly.
Networks,
Yeah,
basically.
exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how you build long-term trust also as well, right? And especially if you're a young founder who doesn't have the power of the network yet, I think travel, attending events, and being vociferously shameful in asking for opening up doors from people that you have had good conversations is the only way for you to get to meet more investors and give it a shot and see what is actually likely to get picked up and what feedback you get that you work upon it and refine your pitch again.
100%, 100%. If you don't have the network right now, just here's what I did in the early days when I was in Gather, right? Where I didn't have so much of a network because first it was Gather, GAF started after that as well. And it's a hilarious story because my partners didn't actually know I was the founder of Gather, and they'd invested in Gather through some pool or whatever. And he discovered I was a founder. I was like, holy shit, I made so much money and stuff. I'm like, oh, you're welcome, I guess. We met up and that's and then Crypto Fight Night started afterwards from it as well. Is that help as many people as you can, go out of your way, do whatever it takes, right? There's a saying by a famous rapper called Drake, did all the favors, they never repaid me, but it worked out in my favor at the end, right? Something like that, at least. Do it, because you never know when you help someone and you build that trust, when you're not as elevated, it pays dividends down the line, honestly. And continue to do that as you grow in your journey, because life isn't just like this, it's like this, right? At the end of the day.
Exactly. So I at Foundership, we have this very strong belief of give first across our entire value ecosystem that we have been building, with a simple belief that what goes around comes around. And before you ask anyone for help, ask that question that what can I give first to someone? Because everyone always has something to give, and always the world is ready to receive.